Paramount Plus has followed YouTube and BBC's lead in distancing itself from comedian Russell Brand after several women accused him of sexual assault. NBC News reports the platform has removed one of Brand's stand-up comedy specials, Russell Brand in New York City. NBC reached out to the service for comment and did not hear back.
Now, according to screenshots, the 2009 special was available on the streaming platform as of yesterday morning, but was taken down later, and yesterday was replaced with an error message. This is according to the Daily Mail. Brand's most recent comedy special, Russell Brand Rebirth, that's still available for the time being on Netflix, although I would not be surprised to see that disappeared maybe by the end of the day.
This is so interesting because I remember the fervor around Dave Chappelle's comedy specials being, frankly, bigger than this and more than this. And Netflix never actually took anything down as far as I remember or could look up on the internet.
There are episodes of television shows that have something like the culturally, or the Community episode where there's technically blackface because he's portraying a dark elf and it's a commentary on the concept of blackface. That got taken down from, I can't remember if it was Netflix or Hulu or something. Bottom line is I really don't like this trend. I think this is very bad. Again, you can feel however you want about the accusations against him. Obviously, they're very serious. They have some degree of documentation. I think it's fine to be, kind of waiting to see if more evidence emerges. But there's a lot there. At the same time, being cognizant of the fact that they're coming out and they've been assembled now purposefully by a journalistic project solely because that Russell Brand is now a influential figure in an alternative media ecosystem. I think that's transparently obvious. Well, but all of that aside, I don't like this. Again, all of those, Netflix, again, is a private company, can do whatever it wants, but it's like, this is weird to say, the content didn't commit the alleged sexual assault, right? It seems like a very ass-covering, like knee-jerk corporate PR response.
Sure.
Like, here's how we show solidarity. We take down a piece of content, a piece of art. That doesn't really do anything for victims of sexual misconduct.
Let's just moot this out a little bit, because I don't know quite how I feel about it yet either. What if the argument is more akin to our audience is going to have a negative reaction if they see, even in the short term, maybe they'll put it back up when it dies down a little bit, but if they see in the short term a controversial figure that they are likely not to like or to have negative feelings about, it feels like a tacit endorsement. So we're going to take this down temporarily while this blows over, or at least push it down the algorithm so it's not on the front page. I'm reminded also that after the Bill Cosby allegations resurfaced in 2014, many stations stopped showing reruns, and you basically never see the Cosby Show on TV anymore. I mean, do you think that those situations are analogous? Do you also agree that it was right to pull those Cosby episodes off of TV?
Frankly, I don't think it's right to pull those episodes. I mean, what about the other people involved in that production?
That was my issue at the time.
I mean, Harvey Weinstein financed how many films? I'm sure you can find some of those films. Repellent, disgusting, convicted rapist, and is everyone involved in his? Some of his victims are involved in his movies. Probably don't want those. The Frida Kahlo biopic that he helped finance. Probably was Selma Hayek. Is it? She probably doesn't want that to never be seen again, right?
Yeah.
As frustrated as she was with his obvious conduct.
Yeah, but there was also, I remember Michael Moore at the time was working on his, I don't know if it's still his most recent film. I think it's the film about Trump that he made, had apparently done much of that work with the Weinstein Company at the time the allegations really blew up, and he chose to leave all of that work behind. They owned that product, and he basically restarted the movie separate and apart from the Weinstein Company after the allegations broke. So if you're in the middle of it, you can make that kind of decision.
Maybe you're in the middle of it, but do we have to put things down the memory hole because decades later the person becomes significantly problematic in some way?
Well, the other
What's
issue
the limiting
here
principle here?
The other issue for me is, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, he had written about much of this, maybe including the relationship with a 16-year-old in his book. So there is, even if you agree, as I do, it's not illegal in the UK apparently, but it is deeply morally suspect for in my humble subjective opinion, for a 31-year-old to be dating a 16-year-old. There is this question of why, why didn't you care a month ago, but now you care today? And I'm also reminded there was this incident with Nate Parker. He's an actor and he's been in stuff. But his biggest film he was producing and acting in was a Nat Turner, the Slave Rebellion guy movie. When he was a teenager in college, he was charged with rape. It seems there's no dispute that he did it. Like he and his friend.
Didn't he serve time for it?
No, his friend who participated in the, gang rape, did go to jail. There was some the law was quirky because he had a prior sexual relationship with the woman. The judge basically said she had previously consented, so he didn't go to jail, but his friend did. I don't agree with the way the law worked, but that's what it was. And that was very open. That was public. It was on his Wikipedia page, I believe.
I'm looking at it now.
He started having this whole career, and then at the point at which he was really having breakout success before the airing of that particular movie, suddenly all the news came out and people were talking about blacklisting that film. And then again, I had this question. Obviously, what he did was terrible. But how much of this is about, objection to this particular movie that has a revolutionary kind of a message and, very progressive message? That was an argument that was being made. Why didn't we care about it when he was starring in a movie 2 years ago with Google and Boo Through Raw, and we're supposed to care about it now? And what is the statute of limitations on these things?
And the work of art is not responsible.
And everybody else
the thing they created didn't do it.
Right. But although people were also concerned that there were rape scenes in the movie and that felt disrespectful to some survivors, and he did produce and was a bigger part of that movie than just being a cast member. So it's difficult. I'm just bringing these things up because I do think we've been wrestling with these issues now in the Me Too context for years without getting to the root of some of the limiting principles, as you say, which I think would make it easier to mitigate these situations.
Well, and also because there's no way to make up. There's no social understanding. Like, okay, you did something wrong.
Right.
Here's
what does
the
penance look like?
And then you're past it, and then we can consume your stuff again.
Outside of a criminal justice context, because for whatever reason, the law didn't put him behind bars, and so maybe people would have been okay with it if he had served 7 years or whatever, gotten out and lived his life. But how do you repay your debt to the victims and to society outside of a criminal justice context? And is anything enough? And if nothing's enough, are we going to be in a place where nobody even tries to make amends? And is that the world that we want to live in?
I don't think so. I wanted to play this clip of Megyn Kelly discussing the accusation of the 16-year-old. She feels about it similarly to how you felt about it. I thought this was an interesting response because I'm mostly seeing defense of Russell Brand on the right, and this was kind of an exception. Let's watch.
I don't really care if it turns out that the rape charge or the sexual assault charges fall apart. You're 31 years old and you have sex allegedly over a 3-month period with a 16-year-old. We're done. I'm unsubscribing. All right. And I am sick of conservatives online trying to defend that as though she had a role in it. She was a minor. Just because you can't be prosecuted for it doesn't mean it's right. The conservative men I know are lovely. They're ethical. They're honorable. It's not to say they've never fallen down in their lives, but in no world would they be taking advantage of a 16-year-old minor. I have a daughter who's 4 years away from that. You come anywhere near her as a 31-year-old man, and we are going to have a serious problem. And it's not going to be over whether you get demonetized on YouTube. Yes. I really hope my friends on the conservative side of the aisle would remember, just because we're all over Me Too and it was an overreaction and it went too far and it got politicized, doesn't mean that we have to knee-jerk defend every scumbag who gets accused of bad behavior.
Yeah, I get where she's coming from. And I think that when you're a parent and you're spending a lot of time with young kids, you have a much clearer sense of their maturity level, not just what they look like, but how vulnerable they are, because they're so dumb. They're just babies. And I can understand 100% where her passion is coming from. And also this kind of critique of the conservative right, which really articulates a value of having social conservatism and protecting kids and being anti-pedophiles, but it again and again in moments like this seems to put the legality of it aside, put what these social media apps should do to Russell Brand to the side. There's very little expression of, ooh, yikes, maybe you shouldn't, even if it's not against the law, maybe we shouldn't be having sex with 16-year-olds. And again, you see people who have branded themselves as defenders of children against pedophiles in very suspicious situations on the right. So there was a story recently that the Sound of Freedom, that movie that did so well, that was an anti-child trafficking movie, hero Tim Ballard allegedly, this is just an allegation, but allegedly pressured women to take showers with him or share a bed, ostensibly to fool human traffickers, to see how far she was willing to go. And then Paul Hutchinson, an executive producer of The Sound of Freedom, allegedly touched the naked breast of an apparently underage trafficking victim during a 2016 undercover operation. So again, you just keep seeing this pattern of the accusations being confessions. And so is there going to be any pushback from the right at the same time they defend people against overreach from social media companies, against the underlying act of exploiting children?
Look, I agree with you that this is definitely, it's creepy behavior, and even if it's not legal, or even it's not illegal, which is not illegal in the UK, Europe has different standards on these things that I would make a lot of us Americans very deeply uncomfortable. There is a little bit though of okay, what age are people actually adults, and what conservatives, maybe this is hypocrisy if any conservative is saying this, fine, but conservatives are saying that if you're under 16 or maybe under 18, you shouldn't be allowed to do to transition, to take puberty blockers, all that stuff. And aren't many progressives fighting for their body autonomy, and it's their right to do that, but it's not their right to have sex with an older. I feel like there needs to be just like a universal age: driving, alcohol, voting, marriage, sex, body autonomy. It kicks in at some point. We should decide that that's what it is, and it's not going to make everybody happy. It's not going to cover every edge case in the world. But rather than have this sliding scale of rights all over the place that we fight over.
Well, we're not talking about rights here, because what Russell Brand did in the UK wasn't illegal. But Megyn Kelly is expressing moral outrage. And this is a thing that has come up several times in life and on the show. I do think that sometimes these technical conversations we have about what the broad standard should be of a social media company or whatever are substituted for an honest conversation about what we feel as a society is morally right. And I think that what Megyn Kelly was articulating is that she personally is not interested in engaging with Russell Brand as the mother of a 12-year-old, because she feels like what he has done is, from her subjective personal point of view, morally abhorrent. And she is really a solitary voice on the right in even articulating that. And she said, she's the one who was Me Too'd at Fox News, very famously. And I think behaved very courageously in the face of that and standing up against it and getting not as much support as I think that she should have from people in her own political cohort. And she's willing to say that Me Too still went too far, even though she was a victim of it. She's willing to validate so many of the concerns about social media and the like. But at the same time, she's like, I can still say, as the mother of a teenager or a preteen, that this is not okay behavior. And I wish that people could land in that space and acknowledge that both things can be true. That what Kanye West said was anti-Semitic and wrong, and also that he shouldn't be stripped of his privileges to bank at a bank. That maybe Russell Brand shouldn't be demonetized, but hell yeah, it's gross for a 31-year-old to have sex with a 16-year-old.
I should say, I think it was Gretchen Carlson, right, was the person who had the very serious Me Too.
I don't know about how serious,
Ailes.
but she was definitely one of the kind of bombshell.
I know she was
people.
in Bombshell. I don't quite remember what that story was, if it was a serious thing. I think Gretchen Carlson is the one who accused Roger Ailes of deeply serious.
Well, the whole point was that it was a systemic issue at Fox News, and that all of the many women at Fox News experienced a hostile sexual harassment environment.
Yeah. Well, this is a big issue, obviously. Russell Brand is a significant figure in our kind of content creation space, so I think we will continue, to talk about this and think through what the right response of.
And I'd love to hear from Russell Brand what he thinks.
Yeah.
Rehabilitation.
Well, we've invited him to be on the show. We would love to actually talk to him about all of this.
Because he has been very honest and made amends and apologies about things in his past, and so I am looking forward to seeing what he says going forward.
More Rising right after this.